We're here in Sebring at Strangely Warmed Coffee with Steve Slaybaugh. Steve, it's good to talk to you again, my friend.
Good to see you, Barry.
Now, when I first came, you had started a powder coating company, but you've had several businesses before you started this.
Yes, I did. I had a trailer sales up across from the mall for several years, and thankfully the Obama economy crashed me. And then we started the powder coating business a few years later, and now I find myself in the coffee business.
How did you get into the coffee business?
Well, our church members were tired of crappy church coffee, they quoted, and so somebody brought 5 or 10 pounds of green coffee beans from Peru, and we got this roaster that had been Brewster's, and we all set it up in the church and started roasting coffee, and everybody was smitten by how good and smooth that Peruvian coffee was.
Did you have to go to YouTube University to find out how to roast coffee and how to make it palatable for human consumption?
Well, we did a lot of YouTubing, and then we found one of the roasters that had worked for Brewster's, and he came in and kind of showed us the ropes and things. So it's been trial and error. We had some burnt batches and some that weren't so good, so we learned the hard way, but I think we got it pretty well down now.
So when you you started with Peruvian coffee, do you find that from year to year, from season to season, the coffee changes at all?
It stays pretty consistent. We try to get it out of the same provinces, the same farms and such, the same area, so it stays pretty consistent.
Do they tell you, like, we had a good year this year, a bumper crop, or this year was tough, the weather didn't cooperate with us, that kind of thing?
They don't tell us that, Barry. We just look at the price tag and we know that they had a bad year.
So Peruvian coffee, you've gone on to Colombia, Nicaragua. How many different countries do you import coffee from now?
We have 5 different origins, and we're constantly testing. And we just had a farmer from Ethiopia was in here with coffee 2 weeks ago, and we tested it and tried it, but we decided at this time that wasn't what we wanted.
Is that because of the latitude that they're on?
It has to do, it's a lower altitude coffee, number one, and then they didn't have a very good crop, so it was not the premium 1 grade, it was a lower grade of coffee. And quite frankly, we just tasted it, and it just wasn't what we want to sell.
Well, from humble beginnings of just taking coffee and roasting it and grinding it up and drinking it, you've got a whole setup here. Actually, this is a coffee lab because you have a laboratory over here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do. So we want to test our coffee when it comes in. We want to test the moisture to make sure it's fresh. We sample roast it to see if it's a product we want to buy. And then we try to look at the cost of it. We get most of our coffee out of a warehouse in Jacksonville, and if I get it out of the big warehouses in New York and New Jersey, the shipping is about 5 times what I get it out of Jacksonville, and that all goes into a price of coffee.
So now you are, they call you a boutique roaster? Is that what they call this kind of an operation?
I don't know that they use that word, but a small batch roaster.
Small batch.
Mm-hmm.
And so is this like craft beers now that's strangely warmed and Blackout Coffee, some of these other smaller coffee places that we see, are they kind of pulling from the same stock but having different processes?
Yeah. Yes, specialty coffee, and there's an association called the Specialty Coffee Association of America, and they set the standards for what you need to do to use the name specialty coffee. Premium, the word premium means nothing. You can do anything you want and call it premium, but specialty coffee, you got to meet certain criteria.
So that's very interesting because if you just go to the regular grocery mart and get regular coffee, or if you go to the drive-through place that's making coffee, some of the terms that they're using are not necessarily terms that really mean anything in the world of coffee making.
That's just marketing terms.
Yeah. So now you really like the Peruvian coffee. Is that the reason you kind of have more Peruvian than some of the other coffees?
Well, it's funny. That's our biggest seller. Dark Peruvian's our biggest seller. But probably when people ask me what I like, I say dark Peruvian, and that's what they buy. So
warm coffee in downtown Sebring on the road, and that was my phone going off, which I didn't take my own advice and silence it. But we're talking with Steve Slaybaugh about strangely warmed coffee. That's what happened here. Jerry suggested the Peruvian coffee. I have to tell you, I like that the best. Are there really marked differences between Colombian coffee and Peruvian coffee and Nicaraguan coffee? Are there really that much difference?
They not a great deal of difference, but they all have their sensory notes that are a little bit different. Dark chocolate versus milk chocolate, and that's nothing we put in it. A lot of people think that we flavor our coffee, and it's not. It's just what Mother Nature puts in the beans, and that's the tasting. And so there's professional tasters that taste this, and so when we buy coffee, we know what the sensory notes are, and we know what the cupping score is.
So do you compare like what the altitude was for the Peruvian coffee you buy compared to maybe the altitude that the Colombian coffee was at? Does that help determine how strong or how mild it is?
Not so much that, but the higher the altitude, the harder the bean gets, and the more harder the bean is, the more flavor comes out of that bean. So, and once again, the price tag kind of tells us what the altitude is.
Now you went to Peru to look at the coffee and the coffee operation.
We went to Peru in 21, and we missed the harvest. They'd already been harvesting, but we went to the wet mills where they were processing, so we got that. But just here 2 weeks ago, we was in Colombia, actually on a farm, and so their harvest was also over with. But we saw the process. We got hands on at the farm, and even rode the mules up to the top of the mountain to see the higher altitude coffee.
You know, I was a wine connoisseur at one time, and I watched them pick the grapes, and they'd come through, and there would be a harvest, and they'd pick the grapes, and they'd go and press them and make wine out of them. But when they pick the coffee beans, they only hand pick the ripe ones.
Right.
So that there's a difference. What, they get 4 different pickings out of this?
Yes, about 4 different pickings to get just ripe beans. So they do not want any of the greener beans in there. When we're roasting, there's a term for a bean that doesn't turn the colors called a Quaker, and it doesn't take many Quakers in there to start setting it off to the bitter taste. So especially coffee can only have like 4 Quakers to a 10-pound batch to still make the grade.
So let's say that I go to the grocery mart and I go to the large scale coffee company that's on the shelf there. They're not hand picked. They just come through with a machine, and if there's a bean, it's going with them.
Yeah, and bird nest and broken sticks and all other good stuff.
So attractive. So now on the wall here, you have this great picture of these coffee beans, but they're not beans; they're just cherries. Can you explain how they're red, and I guess the seeds inside of those? Is that right?
Yeah, so when they're growing on the tree will be just loaded with these cherries, and so when they turn nice and red, that's when they're ripe for the picking. If you leave them on too long, they'll start falling on the ground. So they don't all ripen on the tree at the same time. So they have to make several pickings, and those trees are sitting on the sides of mountains. I mean, it's really steep, and I don't know how those guys can do that day after day, just standing there picking cherries.
So on this picture, most of them are red, but there's a couple of green ones. I take it the green ones are not yet ready to be picked.
Right, and they'll come back in a week or two, and they'll go over them again and try that. So after the cherry is picked, they run it through a depulper, and that takes all that cherry meat off of there, and you have what everybody calls coffee beans is actually coffee seeds, and so they'll wash that real well to take all that juice and such off them, and then it'll be sun dried for 2 or 3, 4 days.
And then from there, after it's dried, they put them in the bags and send them off to you. Is that the way it works?
After they're dried, they'll bag them up, and most of the small farms will send it to what is called a wet mill, and they'll run it through a shaker, and there'll be 4 different levels on the shaker, and that'll decide the premium grade 1 and grade 2, 3, 4, and then the smaller stuff that goes clear through to the bottom there we call floor sweepings. That's an industry term. I didn't make that up.
And so then you get them in what, 80-pound? Are these 80-pound bags that we have back here?
70 kilos, which is 152 pounds.
152 pounds, and then so when you get a bag in, do you to take it into the lab and run it and see what the quality of it is before you start working on it?
No, we ask them to send us samples before we ever buy the bag, before we ever get it in here. So when we get the samples, that's when we moisture test it and sample roast it.
Now, have you developed the eye when you open up the bag and you look at it and go, yeah, this stuff is good, or I'm not liking some of the things I'm seeing here. Have you got the eye for that now?
We did have one bag out of all the bags we've ever bought. We had one bag that came in, and when we started to roast, we started noticing a lot of small beans and broken beans. And so I contacted the seller and told them this was not acceptable, and they took it back.
So now you have a 10-pound, this is a 10-pound roaster that you got from the way that you roast them. Can you change, like do a light roast, do a medium roast, do a French roast? So you get maybe out of a 150-pound bag, you get 8 or 10 different incarnations of these.
Yeah, so we just put the same coffee in the top every time, whether it's Peru or Colombia or Honduras, and then we dump it into the hopper, and it tumbles in there. And so I can do a batch of dark roast. It goes to 425 degrees, and the following batch I can change, dump it at a different temperatures. So. And then I can switch right over to Colombia if I want. We just have to make sure we're putting in the right totes that are labeled correctly. So yeah, it's really easy just to keep on going. Sometimes we roast for 4 or 5 hours at a time, just filling up our totes.
So what is your biggest seller? Is the Peruvian dark? Is that the biggest
Peruvian
seller?
dark, yeah, and I'm probably a little influential in that because that's my favorite.
Right. I mean, we've tried some different ones, and I have to admit that I like the Peruvian dark as well. How much coffee comes out of here, like in local sales, Highlands, Hardy, Polk, DeSoto counties? I mean, the local area. I know you have a lot of return customers. How much coffee do you sell out of the office here?
$400 or $500 a day.
So then, do you have internet sales as well? Do you pack these up and send them to Timbuktu and Timbuk3?
Yeah, we even had a international sale just a couple of months ago. Somebody from the UK picked up on our name Strangely Warmed, and he was a retired Methodist pastor, and Strangely Warmed meant something to him, so he ordered a box of it for here.
Do you get much feedback? Did they say, gosh, this is the best coffee you've ever had?
They really was excited. I think they was more excited about the picture on the bag than the coffee, but it was a novelty thing for them.
One of the machines you have over here, very interesting, you actually make K-cups over here for the K. Do you sell a lot of those K-cups?
We are selling a lot of K-cups. We have started what we call the variety pack. So especially for offices, and now it's really catching on for homes, we got 5 different origins, and we have dark and medium in both of those. And then we have a washed and a natural process coffee. So people now, instead of just taking a whole box of 30 of something, they can take a variety pack for the same price. And we've got a few customers around here that have offices that are buying those for in their lounges and things, and they have really become popular.
Now, you say you have 5 different countries of origin that you buy from. Is there anything new on the horizon that has gotten you interested in going to maybe a different country or a specialty coffee?
What we're really looking for is a relationship. We're looking for farms that maybe are big enough to have their own facility to process coffee. So I'm real soon here meeting with a guy I just found in Orlando that their family has had a farm for 100 years in Guatemala. And we do Guatemala coffee, but we buy it from the warehouse right now. So I'm meeting with him, and I'm pretty sure we're going to get our coffee directly from them, because the feel good in coffee is about the farm, the process, the farmers, and things. And both Jerry and I both grew up in Indiana, where a farm. She grew up on a farm, so we have a soft place for our farmers. And so if we know their story, just like the Columbia farm we visited, it just puts a whole lot more feel good into the whole thing, knowing that you know the family and how we can help support them.
Now, you showed me something very interesting, because most of these are in South America, maybe Central America, but you have a small bag of coffee that was actually grown here in Florida by, I guess you'd say, a hobbyist?
Yep. Yeah, that was really unusual, because good coffee needs to grow at 4,000 feet. And I think the altitude where he grew it was about 110 feet. But we sampled it, and we sent it off to a lab to have it tested, and just for fun. And It's nothing that he's ever going to produce enough to sell, but it was just a fun thing coffee growing right here in Sebring.
Yeah, I think it's described as not horrible.
Not
Yeah,
horrible.
it was not horrible, and so that's because I've always wanted to grow two crops I wanted to grow. I wanted to grow enough coffee to have a cup of my own coffee, and I wanted to grow tobacco. And I watched we'll call him a survivalist who was growing tobacco in Pennsylvania. So I figured if they can grow it in Cuba and they can grow Pennsylvania, I could grow it here. But I haven't found a small batch. Only like one or two tobacco plants would be plenty for me. But this is a really interesting process, but it's all from overseas. The word of the day is tariffs. Have the tariffs hurt you at all in this coffee yet?
Uh, the tariff thing, they're having to pay some tariffs, but they're pretty careful on coffee tariffs and coffee taxes and things because the U.S. doesn't grow any coffee of any amount, and so they don't want to put tariffs on things that we don't produce here. So they're pretty gentle with it.
Well, the nice thing about this little operation you have here is I can come in here and get a cup of coffee right out of the brewer here or the roaster here. Do you sell to any commercial entities that feature strangely warm coffee at all?
We do. Food for Thought has been a customer of ours for a long time. Market 27 has our coffee. The Roanoke Hotel, the new Roanoke Hotel serves our coffee. Irish Pub serves our coffee. Faded serves our coffee. And then I have a coffee shop in St. Cloud, and they buy regularly a couple times a month. And I have a coffee shop in Davenport.
Wow.
So we're reaching out. And then we also our online sales. I just shipped some stuff to California yesterday. So, I mean, our online sales are doing well.
Now this is a fairly small space
Mm-hmm.
for all of that coffee. Are you looking to expand at any time or add more machines?
I'm getting a little nervous about our growth here. So we're bringing in quite a bit of coffee here pretty shortly as soon as the Columbia's turned loose. And we're adding a space over here where we're actually have a coffee bar. So we'll never be a sit-down restaurant, but we will have a coffee bar. So yes, I am real concerned about that. And there's no other space left in this building to be able to expand.
Yeah, now the dings you're hearing is customers coming in to buy some coffee and get. So you expecting like how many of these 150-pound bags do you think you're going to get in from Columbia?
There's supposed to be 10 pallets.
Wow, 10 pallets?
10 pallets with 10 on a. That's not just for us, though. The owners will be selling green coffee to other roasters too. So that's not just for us.
Oh, okay. So I was going to ask you, how many 24-hour a day do you plan to work to get this all processed exactly?
Well, I'm working about 50 hours a week, but this is the most fun business I've ever had, and people are so appreciative of good coffee. Our customers are loyal. We know we got to keep our prices down because we're selling a Cadillac product in a Chevrolet town.
Yeah.
And so we got to keep our prices right, and so we really struggle with keeping our prices.
Well, it smells really good in here. This is a job that I could work at a very low price just to be around the aroma of this coffee. Does it smell better when you're grinding the coffee and cooking it?
It does, but I've been in here smelling it long enough. I really don't even smell it anymore. So.
Man, I'm telling you, this is it. Now, first of all, you're online. If folks want to buy this stuff online, where do they go?
www.strangelywarmed.com.
That's pretty easy. Strangely, it's STRANGELY, warm, WARMED,
Yep.
strangelywarmed.com. If they want to come here into Sebring to pick it up live and in a living person, what's the address here?
161 South Commerce, Suite B, with the entrance on Mango Street.
Yeah, you make a little turn on Mango here, right by Kaylee Tuck's office. The Florida representative turned by Kaylee Tuck's office. She's right across. Does Kaylee come over and order coffee?
I've never met Kaylee.
Oh well, I'm going to call Dana today. Her guy Dana.
I've met Dana a lot of times.
Yeah, we'll have to have Kaylee come over and do an endorsement for your coffee. And Steve, this is a wonderful operation, and I'm just congratulations to this. And when you get ready to move and begin your world conquest, let us know.
All right.
This is Barry Foster on the road. We're with Steve Slaybaugh out here at Strangely Warm Coffee. That's strangelywarm.com. or right here off Commerce Street. Give me the number again on
Sweet Bee.
Sweet Bee. Yeah, but you can find out things. So we thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you.